The Galactic Empire's fleet arrived in Earth's orbit like a black storm blotting out the stars. Thousands of warships, each larger than any human city, hovered in silence, their weapons charged and ready. For the people of Earth, it was a sight beyond terror. Every news channel, every screen in the world, showed the same thing: impossibly massive ships surrounding their home. Then, a voice, deep and mechanical, echoed across the planet. "This is the Galactic Empire. You will surrender immediately. You have 72 hours to comply. Resistance will result in annihilation." The message was clear. There was no room for negotiation, no chance of diplomacy. The Empire had spoken, and in their history, no civilization had ever survived after receiving such an ultimatum. To them, Earth was just another primitive planet, another weak species to be crushed under their rule. But something was different this time. Inside a hidden underground command center, world leaders sat together for the first time in human history, their faces grim. Some wanted to surrender, others demanded to fight, but all of them knew one thing: this was not a battle they had ever prepared for. Humanity was outmatched in numbers, technology, and sheer firepower. The Empire's ships were built for planetary destruction. A single one of those warships could wipe out entire continents. And yet, amidst the fear, there was something else: a quiet, unsettling confidence. A man, dressed in a simple military uniform, stepped forward. His voice was calm as he addressed the leaders. "They think they know us," he said. "They think we will break like every other species they've conquered. But they have no idea what they've just walked into." The room fell silent. Every screen in the command center displayed the countdown. 72 hours. The Empire was waiting for Earth's surrender. But instead of drafting a surrender treaty, the world leaders approved a different kind of response. A message was sent. Short, direct. It was broadcast not just to the Empire's fleet, but across their entire communication network. "You don't want this war." The Empire's high command received the transmission and burst into laughter. The arrogance of these humans amused them. What could a species barely capable of interstellar travel possibly do to them? The response they had expected was fear, begging, desperation. Instead, they got a warning. It was almost insulting. The Imperial Admiral, a being with skin like molten metal and eyes like burning suns, leaned back in his command chair. "Fools," he muttered. "Prepare the first strike. Let them understand what defiance costs." As his officers moved to obey, something strange happened. For a brief moment, the fleet's systems flickered. A small disruption, barely noticeable. The Admiral frowned. He dismissed it as a technical glitch, unaware that it was the first sign of something they had never encountered before. Back on Earth, deep beneath layers of security, a select group of individuals watched the enemy fleet, their expressions unreadable. They had been waiting for this moment, preparing in the shadows. The world thought of them as myths, as rumors whispered about in secret military circles. But now, they would step into the light. The Empire had given its ultimatum. Humanity had responded. And the countdown continued. The Empire did not wait. They had given their ultimatum. And now, they would prove their superiority. Within hours of Earth's response, the first strike was ordered. The target was not Earth itself, but its outermost colonies, small settlements on Mars, and the moons of Jupiter. The Empire had crushed countless civilizations before, and to them, this was nothing more than routine. Their fleet moved like a machine, cold and efficient, their weapons primed to wipe out any resistance before it could begin. The first wave of Imperial warships descended on Mars, expecting an easy victory. The settlement of New Horizon was their primary target, a city of nearly 1 million people, its domed structures glistening under the pale red sky. The Empire assumed it would be defenseless. After all, no primitive species could possibly prepare for an invasion of this scale. But as their warships entered the atmosphere, something unexpected happened. Their targeting systems failed. The lead warship, A towering destroyer armed with enough firepower to obliterate a continent suddenly found itself blind. Its sensors flickered, struggling to lock onto the city below. One by one, the other ships in the fleet reported the same problem. Their weapons refused to fire. Their communications were jammed. Confusion spread through the Imperial ranks. This was not a malfunction. This was something else. Then the first ship disappeared. Not exploded, not shot down. It simply vanished. One moment it was there, a massive behemoth casting its shadow over the Martian landscape. The next, it was gone. No explosion, no debris, no trace. The Empire had fought many wars, but never had they seen anything like this. Panic began to spread through the fleet. The commanding officer, a veteran of 100 conquests, demanded answers. He received none. The enemy had not fired a single shot, and yet they were losing. Back in the Imperial High Command, the news was met with disbelief. How could an inferior species be causing such chaos? How could they be losing ships without any visible attack? The Emperor himself was informed, and for the first time in centuries, he felt something he had not experienced before: doubt. Meanwhile, on Earth, the response was silent. There was no celebration, no declaration of victory. The people of Mars had been warned to take shelter, but they had not seen the battle. The enemy had come, and now the enemy was gone. Humanity had never claimed to be the strongest species in the galaxy, but they had spent centuries preparing for the day when someone would come to take everything from them. The Empire had made its move. Now, it was Earth's turn. The Empire was in chaos. Entire warships were vanishing without a trace. No wreckage, no distress signals, just silence. The reports from Mars were impossible to comprehend. The fleet sent to secure the colony was gone. Not destroyed, gone. And yet, Earth had not fired a single visible shot. The Emperor, a being who had ruled for centuries without fear, felt a chill creep through his ancient bones. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship, Admiral Vekros stood motionless, his molten eyes fixed on the reports flooding in. Every battle in the Empire's history had followed the same pattern: arrive, demand surrender, obliterate resistance. It had always been efficient, predictable. This was not. He turned to his officers. Deploy more ships. We will take Earth's homeworld first. Whatever trick they used on Mars, they will not use it against our full force. Across the black void, a second fleet of 1,000 warships moved into position above Earth. Their weapons hummed with energy, their targeting systems locked onto the planet's major cities. This time, they would not wait. They would not hesitate. The Empire would strike with its full might. The order was given, but nothing happened. The ship's weapons refused to fire. The fleet's AI systems, built with the most advanced technology in the galaxy, began shutting down. Communication signals were lost. Panic spread through the ranks as officers scrambled to find the source of the interference. It was impossible. Nothing the humans had could override Imperial technology. And yet something was inside their systems, moving faster than they could react. Admiral Vekros clenched his fists. What is happening? Then, across every Imperial screen, a message appeared. Simple, terrifying. We warned you. At that moment, the Empire's mighty fleet began to fall. Ships plummeted from orbit, their engines failing one by one. The crews inside screamed as they lost control. Some vessels simply blinked out of existence, just as the Mars fleet had. Others drifted aimlessly, their systems completely dead. Earth had not fired a single missile, launched a single fighter. Yet, in a matter of minutes, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy was crippled. Deep within Earth's hidden command centers, a small group of individuals watched the chaos unfold. They did not smile. They did not cheer. They had spent years preparing for this moment, ensuring that when the time came, humanity would not be at the mercy of an alien empire. The Empire had thought them weak. The Empire had thought them primitive. Now, they were beginning to understand the truth. And the worst part, this was only the beginning. Admiral Vecros stared at the carnage before him, his mind unable to process what he was witnessing. His fleet, an armada so powerful that entire civilizations had bowed at the mere sight of it, was crumbling. Warships that had conquered 1,000 worlds now drifted lifeless, their crews trapped inside like tombs. Others had vanished entirely, swallowed by an unseen force that defied all logic. And Earth had done nothing. No fleet had risen to meet them. No missiles had been fired. Yet the Empire was losing. A sharp voice broke through the Admiral's thoughts. "Sir, we're detecting a transmission from the humans." Vecros turned sharply. "Play it." The main screen flickered, and a simple video appeared. A man stood in a darkened room, his face cast in shadows. His expression was calm. Cold. Behind him, faint outlines of screens could be seen, data scrolling endlessly. He was no politician, no general. Yet he spoke with the quiet authority of someone who knew exactly how this would end. "You don't understand what you've started," the man said. "You thought this would be easy. You thought we would kneel." He leaned forward slightly, his voice unshaken. "You came to conquer, but you never asked yourself one simple question." The Admiral felt his hands clench into fists as he waited for the answer. The man on the screen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "What if we were ready for you?" A terrible silence filled the Imperial flagship. Every officer, every soldier on the bridge felt something they had never experienced before. Fear. And then the screen changed. No more words. No more warnings. Just a live feed of something moving in the darkness beyond Earth. At first, Vecros thought it was an error, a glitch. But then he saw them. Ships. Massive, angular, and unlike anything in the Imperial archives. They moved without traditional propulsion, as if space itself bent around them. No energy signatures, no signals, just cold, silent hunters, emerging from the void. Their hulls reflected nothing, as if they weren't even truly there. The officers gasped. Some whispered prayers to long-forgotten gods. Others simply stood frozen. These were not human warships. These were weapons designed for one purpose: to hunt, to kill, to erase anything that threatened Earth. Vecros staggered back. Impossible. But it was happening. The Empire had come to break humanity. Instead, they had awoken something far worse. Something the galaxy had never seen before. And now, it was too late to turn back. The silence in the Imperial flagship was deafening. Vecros stood frozen, his eyes wide as he watched the strange ships emerge from the depths of space. They were beyond anything the Empire had ever encountered. Sleek, dark, and utterly devoid of any sign of conventional technology. No engines flared with light. No power signatures surged from their hulls. They were as if made from the very darkness of space itself. The air around them hummed with a strange, cold energy, and yet they radiated an undeniable presence, a predatory force that seemed to pierce the soul. The screen in front of Vecros displayed the fleet's status, still crippled, still reeling from the unexpected interference. And now, these new ships had appeared, moving silently towards the heart of the Empire's invasion force. The Admiral's mind raced. Where did they come from? He muttered. He had never seen anything like this in his centuries of service. The Empire had scoured the galaxy, conquering and destroying. But Earth had not been on their radar. The humans had been considered too primitive, too scattered, too weak. Yet now, the Empire was facing something even more terrifying than human resistance. One of his officers, a young lieutenant, looked up in fear. "Sir, we can't identify their ships. No markings, no energy emissions. It's as if they're not even there." Vecros snapped to attention. "I don't care what they are. Prepare to engage. We'll use everything at our disposal." But the order was never given. The strange ships, still silent, suddenly moved into position. They surrounded the remnants of the Imperial fleet, cutting off any possible escape routes. A ripple of tension surged through the bridge. The soldiers around Vecros exchanged uneasy glances. It was as though these new ships weren't here to fight. They were here to ensure the Empire's defeat. Then the first strike came. It wasn't a conventional attack. There were no beams of energy, no explosions. The Imperial warships, once so powerful, began to fail in unison. The lights flickered. The engines sputtered. The control systems went haywire, as if some invisible force was dismantling them piece by piece. The Empire's finest technology was useless, collapsing under an unseen power that defied reason. "What are they doing to us?" one officer cried, fear lacing his voice. Vecros turned, his eyes blazing with fury. "Fire. Fire everything we have. We will not be made fools of by these." His words died in his throat as the entire fleet was plunged into chaos. Ships fired blindly, but their shots veered off course, missing their targets. One by one, Imperial vessels began to break apart, their systems completely fried. The attacks had no effect. It was as if the very fabric of space was bending against them. Then, the silent ships moved in closer, as if feeding on the panic that spread across the Imperial lines. And just as suddenly as it had begun, the fleet was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. Vanished into the void. Vecros stood alone in the control room, his heart pounding. The Admiral had never seen such complete and total devastation. The Empire had always been invincible. But now, they were nothing. The once mighty fleet was reduced to a scattered, helpless shell. And Earth had done nothing. The Admiral's voice, hoarse from disbelief, cracked through the silence. What just happened?" An officer spoke, his voice barely a whisper. We've lost contact with the rest of the fleet. They're gone, Admiral. Vanished." Vecros slumped in his chair. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of it all. The Empire had faced countless threats, but never had it been so completely outclassed. These strange, silent ships weren't just tools of war. They were something else, something that had been hidden, prepared, waiting for the moment when the Empire would make its fatal mistake. And that moment had come. The Empire had made its move to conquer Earth, but now, Earth had shown them the true meaning of terror. The stars themselves seemed to tremble at what had just been unleashed. Back on Earth, humanity's hidden defenders watched the Empire's crumbling fleet from their command centers. They had known this day would come. They had prepared for it in the shadows, building weapons far beyond anything the Empire could imagine. The message had been simple, terrifyingly simple. We warned you. And now, the true war had begun. The galaxy was still in shock. News of the Empire's defeat spread like wildfire, and whispers of the Earth's hidden power were on the lips of every alien species. The Emperor, an ancient being who had never known defeat, sat in his throne room, staring out into the void, his mind racing. The message was clear. Earth was not what they had thought. But it wasn't just the message that haunted him. It was the silence that followed. No one had expected this. No one had foreseen the sudden, crushing power that had shattered the Empire's might in a matter of hours. The Emperor had sent an ultimatum to Earth, demanding surrender. He had believed they would cower, that they would bow before the might of his forces. But instead, they had responded with something unimaginable, a force that had torn through the very fabric of imperial power. He clenched his fists, his mind reeling. How did they do it? The question echoed in the empty throne room. Who are they? His council, a group of alien beings from every corner of the galaxy, stood in stunned silence. They were as confused and terrified as he was. No one had ever heard of such technology, such power, let alone from a species they had written off as insignificant. The Empire had always seen humanity as weak, divided, and fractured. And now they were faced with a force that had the ability to cripple their fleets, erase their weapons, and dismantle their control systems. There were no answers, only questions. The Emperor's mind was consumed with fear. What if this was just the beginning? What if humanity had more weapons hidden, waiting to be unleashed? If Earth could do this, what else could they do? Send the message, the Emperor growled, turning to one of his closest advisors. Tell the galaxy that Earth is not to be underestimated. We will not be the ones to fall. His advisor hesitated. Sire, send the message, the Emperor roared. His voice shook the foundations of the throne room. We will crush them. We will destroy whatever this is. I will not allow the galaxy to see us brought down by a race of insignificant, fragile beings. The advisor nodded nervously and quickly left to carry out the Emperor's orders. But even as he did, the Emperor felt a gnawing doubt in the pit of his stomach. He had faced countless enemies over the centuries. Civilizations that had dared to defy the Empire were no longer around to tell the tale. But this was different. On Earth, the silent ships still hovered in the distance, their shadows stretching across the vastness of space. They had not fired another shot. They had not attacked again. It was almost as if they were waiting for something. In the command centers deep beneath the surface of Earth, humanity's hidden defenders continued to monitor the Empire's movements. They knew the Emperor would not give up so easily. The Empire would regroup, rebuild, and return with an even larger force. But they were ready. They had always been ready. The world's leaders had met in secret before this war had even begun, knowing that a day would come when the Empire would turn its attention toward Earth. They had built the weapons in silence, training, preparing, and waiting for the moment when the Empire would make its fatal mistake. They had done more than just hide from the galaxy. They had learned. They had adapted. And now, humanity would show the Empire that they were not the prey, but the predators. The message from Earth was simple, yet it resonated through the heart of the galaxy with terrifying clarity. You chose the wrong target. Back in the depths of space, the silent ships, still hovering, seemed to pulse with a quiet energy. No one knew what they were or where they had come from, but their message was undeniable. They had not been sent as a warning, but as an answer. Humanity was not alone, and whatever force had come to their aid was far more powerful than the Empire could ever comprehend. The first skirmish had only just begun, but the Empire had already lost. And Earth was only getting started. You said. The galaxy trembled as the Emperor's War Council convened once more. The Imperial forces had rallied, their pride wounded but their determination stronger than ever. Despite the defeat, they still believed in their superiority. They had never faced an enemy like the humans, but they would not be deterred. They would strike back with everything they had. And this time, they would make sure Earth was nothing more than a forgotten speck of dust in the cosmos. In the Grand Command Room aboard the Emperor's flagship, the air was thick with tension. The council members, a collection of the most powerful and ruthless beings in the galaxy, stood around the long table, their expressions grim. Their eyes were locked on the Emperor, who paced back and forth, his mind racing with calculations and strategies. They have humiliated us. One of the council members, a tall, insectoid species with sharp mandibles, hissed. We cannot let them get away with this. They will pay for this insolence. Another council member growled, his voice low and threatening. He was a massive creature, built like a walking mountain, his black eyes glowing with rage. We will wipe them from existence. The Emperor's piercing gaze swept across the room. He knew what had to be done. But this time, he would not rush into battle. He had learned his lesson. The humans were not the weaklings he had assumed them to be. They had a power, something more than technology, more than strategy, that had turned the tides of the battle. And now it was clear that the Empire's methods would not work. They needed something more. They needed to understand humanity. I will not let our legacy be tarnished by this. This anomaly. The Emperor finally spoke, his voice ice cold. But we cannot attack blindly again. We must learn what we're truly dealing with. He turned to his advisor, the one who had suggested sending the message after the first defeat. Prepare the intelligence teams. I want to know everything about Earth, its people, their history, their culture, their military capabilities, everything. I want to know how they managed to turn our fleet to dust with no visible effort. The advisor nodded. It shall be done, Your Majesty. The Emperor's mind swirled with thoughts of vengeance. But as he looked out into the vast expanse of space, he realized something he had not considered before. The humans were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something deeper, something beyond their comprehension. In a darkened control room deep within the heart of Earth's military command center, the team of human leaders gathered once again. They knew the Empire would strike again. The moment the Emperor had sent his ultimatum, the writing had been on the wall. This was just the beginning. And though they had defeated the Empire once, they understood that victory was only temporary. The Empire was relentless. We cannot afford to sit back and wait for them to regroup, General Callahan said, his voice grave. He was a seasoned leader, having spent years in the most dangerous corners of the galaxy, but nothing had ever prepared him for this. He had always believed humanity was just one more species on the edge of extinction, teetering on the brink of annihilation. But now, they were standing at the precipice of something far more incredible. We've already shown them what we're capable of, another officer, Lieutenant Jacobs, added. But we can't rely on just these ships. We need a strategy. We need to strike them before they strike us. The room went silent as every face turned toward the screens in front of them. The silent ships were still hovering, waiting, but now there was a new presence in the air, an energy, a quiet, unspoken understanding that they were no longer alone in this fight. Earth had allies, but no one knew exactly who or what those allies were. What if this is just the beginning? Callahan said, his voice lowering. What if we've just opened a door that we can't close? He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of his team. They understood what he meant. They had won the first battle, but they were still at war. And the cost of this war would be higher than anything they had ever imagined. The Empire was powerful, but Earth had something it didn't. An unyielding spirit, a willingness to fight to the very end. The lights in the command room dimmed as the central display flickered to life. Another message came through. This time, a single image, a human face, a woman. Her eyes were filled with quiet resolve, and her expression told a story of strength, of resilience. She spoke, her voice clear and steady. We've warned you. Now it's time to show you what happens when humanity is pushed too far. And then the feed ended. No more words, just that image. And a feeling, the feeling that the Empire had awakened something they could never destroy. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity was not just another civilization to conquer. They were a force of nature, rising up against an empire that had underestimated them. The stage was set. The second act was about to begin. The Emperor, unaware of the full scope of what humanity was capable of, prepared for his next move, still blinded by his arrogance. But this time, he would not be the one in control. The galaxy was about to witness something they had never imagined. Earth's true power. The Imperial fleet was massive, a display of raw power and an unstoppable will to dominate. Every warship in their arsenal had been mobilized, each one bristling with weapons of mass destruction, each one capable of wiping out entire star systems with a single strike. The Emperor believed that this would be the end of it, that the overwhelming might of his forces would crush Earth once and for all. But what he didn't know, what none of the Empire knew, was that Earth had not only prepared for war, it had evolved into something far more dangerous than they could ever fathom. In the vast control room aboard the Imperial flagship, the Emperor and his council watched the screens with cold anticipation. They had been tracking the humans' every move, every ship, every signal. Earth had been silent since their last encounter, and the Emperor felt the weight of that silence pressing down on him like a vice. It was unnerving. He could not understand how a species so primitive had the audacity to stand against the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. And yet, here they were, preparing for another battle that could tip the balance of power forever. "They're gathering their forces," one of the council members observed, his voice steady, but filled with an edge of concern. "We're about to face their full might." The Emperor stared at the data, his mind working furiously. He had underestimated them once, and he would not make that mistake again. This time, he would take no chances. His fleet would obliterate Earth's defenses, reduce the entire planet to rubble if necessary, and prove that no one, no species, could stand against the Empire. But as the Emperor gave the command to move forward, something unexpected happened. A sudden surge of energy rippled through the fleet. The ships trembled, their systems faltering for a moment. For a split second, it felt as if the very fabric of space itself had been torn apart. The council members exchanged confused glances, their eyes wide with alarm. "Status report," the Emperor barked. We're being hacked," came the reply from a technician, his voice trembling. "Our communications are being overridden. We can't get a read on Earth's movements. Something is blocking our systems." The Emperor's fists clenched in fury. How is this possible? What are they doing? But before anyone could respond, the answer came. A single transmission cut through the chaos, loud and clear, filling the entire room with a chilling message that sent a wave of dread through the hearts of the Emperor and his council. The voice was calm, yet it held an undeniable power, an undeniable certainty. It was human. "We warned you," the voice said, its tone unyielding. "We told you that you would regret underestimating us. But now, it's too late." And then, the screen before them flashed with an image, one they could never have anticipated. A massive ship, unlike anything the Empire had ever seen, emerged from the darkness of space. It was not a warship, not a fighter, but something far more terrifying. Its sleek, angular design seemed to ripple with a strange energy, as if it was alive. The ship was surrounded by a brilliant, pulsing aura, something the Empire had no name for, no explanation for. It was as if the very fabric of space bent and twisted around the ship. Before the Emperor could issue an order, a low hum filled the air, vibrating through the room. And then, without warning, an explosion of light ripped through the space before them. The shockwave was instantaneous. The entire fleet lurched as the force of the energy blast slammed into them, destabilizing their shields, short-circuiting their systems. The vast Imperial ships groaned under the pressure, and some of the smaller vessels began to disintegrate under the force of the blast. For a brief moment, there was only chaos. The ships scrambled to reorient themselves, to regain control, but it was too late. The unknown human force had struck with surgical precision, and their attack had disrupted the very core of the Imperial fleet. The Emperor's eyes widened in disbelief. What is this? How could they have this power? "They've done it," one of the council members whispered, his voice full of fear. "They've weaponized space itself." The realization struck like a thunderclap. The humans had harnessed something far more dangerous than mere technology. They had discovered a force that transcended all that the Empire had known, a power that could bend the very laws of physics, that could unravel the fabric of reality. "Retreat," the Emperor commanded, his voice shaking with rage and fear. "Withdraw the fleet. We need time to regroup. We will find a way to destroy them." But as the ships began to pull back, it was already too late. The humans were not letting up. Their ships, seemingly powered by this strange, otherworldly energy, pursued the Imperial fleet with relentless precision. Every move the Empire made, the humans countered, their ships moving with terrifying speed and coordination, as if they could predict the enemy's every action. It was no longer a battle of firepower. It was a battle of wills. And for the first time in centuries, the Emperor realized something that shook him to his core. The Empire was losing. In the depths of space, the humans pressed on, their ships moving like shadows through the void, striking fear into the hearts of the galaxy's greatest warriors. They were not just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for something far greater. And the Empire, for all its might, was no match for the fury of a species that had been pushed too far. The Emperor knew one thing now. This was no longer just about Earth. This was about the very future of the galaxy, and whether the Empire would survive to see another day.